So I'm Rick Gehrke. My dad, Ron, been no-tilling or playing around with no-till around here since early 2000s. We started incorporating cover crops around 2008. We've just played around with single species, and now we're pretty well, get as diverse as possible. Mostly, our most diverse mixes are probably after wheat, just because we have an open window of long-term. We can get multiple different species in there. Corn and beans can be a little tricky because of the timing of harvest, the timing of termination, but we're doing our best. We're playing around with interseeding here in the corn. But our big thing, like a lot of other farmers in the area, is controlling water hemp, I guess, is our big thing. So we've been playing around multiple different years. We used to interseed our corn. We did that 2 years with a multiple species similar to what we have in the trials here, and then water hemp pretty well took over, and we had to abandon that for a couple years. So hopefully we can slowly get that integrated back into our system. We use a lot of cereal rye. Cereal rye, for us anyway, has been very easy to manage, very painless. It grows late in the fall, it jumps up in the spring. So we have that living root in the ground year-round. On most of our acres right now, especially corn, we will be interseeding our corn here, not next week, the following week. It'll be a cereal rye base. We might sprinkle in some clover and radish, but at that case, depending on our herbicide usage, you're kind of give and take whether the rest of the stuff will grow. After wheat's kind of an open book, the easy button for me. Mostly we're going for weed control, number one, erosion control, but at the end of the day, you can see by some of the pictures, I like to try to get as diverse as possible. Each year on our wheat ground, I always change something up a little bit. We did a similar mix to what here is in the picture. These were actually taken last year. But this year we did a little bit more even than what that is, and a little goes a long way. So whether that is, you know, and I might even have my list of what I put on. I think it turned out to be like a 15-way mix or something like that. You know, so we have annual ryegrass and cereal rye and sorghum sudan. You know, we're using that as our grass crop. It's really good at holding the ground from washing, any kind of erosion control, but also a really good weed controller too, because it's jumping out of the ground. Obviously, sorghum sudan is going to be better at weed control than, say, cereal rye or annual rye, because that'll jump, and with this heat right now, it's growing like crazy. Some of the legumes we got in there, you know, hairy vetch, cowpeas, three different types of clover. One that's I started using and I really like it is sun hemp. It'll get 6 feet tall in 60 days. It'll produce a large amount of nitrogen. A lot of this stuff will die with first frost, so that's another portion we look at. We want something that will come back in the spring. You know, hairy vetch for one of the legumes, you know, that will come back in the spring and produce some nitrogen in next spring. But, you know, some of the clovers, the sun hemp will produce nitrogen, and the cowpeas will produce some nitrogen yet this year. And a lot of that, as it breaks down, the cereal rye will even help grab onto some of that nitrogen and hold it also. But I mentioned buckwheat. Buckwheat's a very good for pea, phosphorus, that is. And a lot of these, you know, they absorb a lot of that lost nutrients, you know, and make them mineralized for the next year's crop. So we've really seen the benefit, especially, you know, like something like this, it's wheat. We put a full season cover crop in it. You know, next year it'll be corn. We'll really see the benefit, you know, that the plant health, you know, and a lot of this, the organic form of the nitrogen, you probably won't notice right away in the spring, but it comes, you know, August, you know, that plant will stay greener a lot longer in the fall. You know, seed cost is on the rise, and unfortunately that's everywhere, no matter if it's corn seed, alfalfa seed, soybean seed, you name it. That as a whole is on the way up. So you can spend anywhere from on the low end, and you don't have to be super diverse like what I got, you know, here, especially starting out. I would never recommend that, but you know, you can go as low as 20 bucks an acre, and you can go as high as 100 bucks an acre, you know, but if you're spending 100 bucks an acre on cover crop seed, you better be subtracting that somewhere else, whether that is in fertility or, you know, herbicide or whatnot to make up for that, or financially it'd be almost foolish, really. You know, you still have to make money farming or we wouldn't all be here. But, and rates, I'll say this too, you don't need to put 100 pounds of rye down and 17 pounds of radish. You know, a little bit goes a long ways starting out. Anything's better than nothing.
I got a question. You said you have some water hemp issues.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that?
So what worked best for us so far is having a very good stand of cereal rye put in the fall. Come spring, let that cereal rye get as big as possible, especially on soybeans. And we did do chemical termination on that late, but as that water hemp lays down, that's helped combat it the best for us.
When that year you have wheat, that water hemp coming through?
Not so much in wheat. No, because we can still control that in wheat, you know, with herbicide if need be.
And generally wheat fields, your population's high enough that it's
Shades everything out, yeah.
the tillering and it's your wet holes that you'd have the biggest issue potentially, or groundnuts.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.